listen, if quarterback is the most important position in the sport, and I think we would say that it is, then it sort of stands to reason that as programs get better, or the word I used yesterday was more mature, maybe they're going to get better at identifying, even among the elite category of quarterbacks, who's the one that really works for me. Early in Saban's tenure, the 5-star quarterbacks that he was getting, they didn't really pan out. Lately, it seems like it's a very different kind of 5-star quarterback that Saban's getting. You know, guys like Tua and Bryce Young almost had the appearance of being a little bit of a sure thing. Or maybe it's because a guy like Mac Jones is also succeeding, that maybe the Alabama offensive system is just so mature now that all of a sudden almost any quarterback that Alabama tabs as its starter can expect to step in and have success. But it's hard not to notice that Alabama for a long time was obviously trying to have a great quarterback, but other than A.J. McCarron in those early days of Saban, I don't know that they actually achieved that. In fact, a lot of the big-time prospects they brought in never really started at all at Alabama, or in some cases really started anywhere else. But around year 10 for Saban, that all changed. After that, it was a string of NFL quarterbacks, one right after the other, and Kirby Smart is nowhere near that tenure yet here at Georgia. So, you know, I'm of the belief that there is a kind of a horizon out there for Georgia where the level of quarterback play is better than it has been. And maybe that comes because of guys that are currently on the roster. Maybe that comes because of guys who are about to come into the program. But I do think it's likely that that's where we could be heading there at some point in time. Senior Dog 54 on the subject of the ESPN preseason FPI. Yeah, I mean, listen, over the course of years, I've had a little bit of a love-hate relationship with some of the analytics stuff. You know, I've probably been following, you know, analytics in college football now for more than 10 years. I remember kind of getting into this, you know, 2012, 2013, somewhere along those times, you know, sort of analytics in sports, whether it be the thing that I think probably got me most interested in the idea of advanced stats, what we call analytics. You know, sometimes in baseball, they used to call it sabermetrics back in the old days. You know, what got me the most interest in that from a sports standpoint was when Miguel Cabrera was battling Mike Trout for American League MVP, and Cabrera was on his way to winning the Triple Crown, which was like one of those things where, you know, for guys who kind of grew up in my era, we didn't have Triple Crown guys. That was you know, an entirely different shelf of achievement. Like, I think for a long time, the most recent Triple Crown had actually kind of occurred before I was born, but here was Cabrera on his way to doing that, yet the kind of analytics-minded, sabermetric-minded folks in baseball there at the time were actually pushing Mike Trout very early in his career to an American League MVP over Cabrera, and they were using analytics as the argument for why. And I remember getting very into that discussion there at that time just because it was kind of new, but I had kind of followed some of the advanced stat stuff, analytics type deal, even in like the presidential election of, say, 2008, 2012. I'd kind of followed some of that there, so I was just interested in that topic there for a while. I would say over the course of the last few years, I've gotten less interested in the topic of analytics. I think the analytics community in college football has essentially failed. I don't think they've changed the conversation well enough. I think that when you look at like preseason FPI or preseason SP Plus or some of these preseason analytics measurements that come out, here we are after almost, like I said, a full decade of this being a pretty big part of the preseason chatter. But for the most part, the average person still is not, you know, all that, you know, this type of stuff isn't very conversational. Like, you know, there are a lot of math type, you know, analytics type people who've kind of pushed this into the world of college football, but I don't think they've done a good enough job of explaining their particular vantage point on all of this to make it more conversation for the rest of us. As I said before, I think the kind of math geek college football community for the most part has failed in their endeavor to really become a big part of the college football conversation, because for the average fan, it's just easy to ignore. When you can't really have a good explanation for why Auburn is in your preseason top 10, that's not the fault of the people who try to understand this. That's the fault of the people who should be better at explaining it, and they're just not. Let's see what else. But I did notice that yesterday. Mark Morris says, got to be tough in every other game. Says, can't type a lick today. Yeah, sometimes you have those days. Sometimes it's one of those things where, like, I can't stand this because, obviously, like, I don't have much in the way of notes. I mean, I just have, you know, a couple of sponsors I got to make sure I hit, things like that. And other than that, I'm pretty much working without a wine list here. And there are some days in which there is just, like, a name in the back of my head that I'm trying to get out, and it's like, I can't remember who it is. And like, it could be anybody. Like, my ability to forget even the name of like a player on the Georgia roster is, I mean, in the moment when you're just sort of speaking and whatever else, there are moments in which Wow, it's just not really coming together today. So Mark says he's having one of those when he's typing. I have plenty of those as I'm trying to speak here, for sure. Randy Hall says, wasn't Yaz the last Triple Crown winner prior to Cabrera? I believe that it was. I believe he did it in 1978. And I think it's been like forever since anyone's done it in the National League. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's been a very long time in the National League. And Carl Yastrzemski did it for the Red Sox in 78. I believe you're right about that, Randy. That's my memory anyway. West GA Dog Fan says, I'm excited about seeing Daishan Edwards tomorrow. I think he could be a diamond in the rough for us this year. I kind of agree. And I guess my curiosity about Edwards is, and I hate to be like so blunt about this, but I'm just going to be, is Daishan Edwards more than a number 3 running back? Because I think we had the sense the last couple of years of, well, he may have been Georgia's number 4 running back, or in some cases even number 5 running back. That may have been what he was, but it's pretty obvious he was more than that. He just was in a situation where the Georgia depth was very well developed in front of him, but clearly he was better than his spot in the pecking order, his spot on the depth chart. And now that other guys have left the program, and now he kind of moves up a little bit, but you also get the sense that maybe he could have the possibility of being more than just the third best running back. And we have commonly seen, like say before the last couple of years, Georgia clearly give 2 backs a lot of carries and then give a third back kind of more than the rest but less than the other 2. And the last couple of years, I think the level of depth that Georgia had at the running back position, the fact that you didn't necessarily have guys necessarily running away from the others, kind of created kind of an ensemble situation. So looking at Edwards tomorrow, assuming that all these guys get some carries, looking at Edwards tomorrow, I think I'm looking at him to see, is this a guy that's making that push to be in the group with Milton and McIntosh? Is this a trio instead of a duo? Or is this kind of a DeAndre Swift 2017 role where you've got your tandem, that's, it was Chubb and Michelle, now it's McIntosh and Milton, and you've got your third guy who's the ultimate change of pace here. Remember, DeAndre Swift's touchdown as the third-string running back in the 2017 SEC Championship game changed history for Georgia football. It made, Auburn impossible to come back, gave Georgia a 28-7 lead, put Georgia in the college football playoff. That was a history-making run for DeAndre Swift. So being the number 3 running back at Georgia is not always a bad place to be. Swift proved that to you back in an SEC championship season in 2017. And so if that's what Edwards is, he's in a role where he has a chance to do something for himself, but there's also the possibility that maybe he's a little bit more than that too. So I think that's good. Boy, a lot of good comments here coming in this morning. We are on the other platforms now, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. We'll do a few more of these, and then we'll start the show. Be kind of casual here, getting ready for G-Day. Dr. Mo Morris checking in from San Diego, where it was not a good night for the Braves last night. I watched a lot of baseball last night. Unfortunately, the 2 teams that I was looking forward to enjoying both took it on the chin pretty hard. Georgia at home to Texas A&M, and the Braves there in San Diego. He says, I've got Saturday. Okay, yeah, so Mo Morris says he's got Saturday and Sunday tickets for the Braves against the Padres. So that's very cool. I've actually never been to San Diego. I'd love to go at some point in time, but I've never been. I've been to L.A., been to San Francisco, but I've not been to San Diego. I think that'd be really fun, and I hope you enjoy it and hope the Braves play a little bit better for you here than they did last night. Randy Hall says, I think Gilbert's going to get some touches tomorrow. Yeah, I do there as well. And, Georgia fans I typically think of as being pretty savvy. So when a guy like Gilbert gets a catch tomorrow, it'll be a huge ovation, not just because he's a prospect they have big expectations for, but because they also, I think, understand the path that he's taken to be back and playing football again. So a savvy Georgia football crowd will give Gilbert a big ovation tomorrow. Dominic Blaylock will be the same way. If Blaylock gets his first catch on Saturday, he will also get a huge ovation for doing so. Just notice this, whether you're watching on TV or you're in the stadium to hear that tomorrow, just kind of notice that. You'll hear big ovation because Georgia fans kind of understand the path traveled back for both those guys. I think that comes. Mo Morris says, it's awesome here. I'm glad to hear that. It's a good time of year to be in California, Southern California especially. Really, really a cool weather town. Not cool like in, bundle up cool, but just kind of a fun place to be from a weather standpoint. It's very nice. It is definitely very nice. Let's see what else. Hemingway says, as much as I'm excited to see how the backup quarterbacks perform, I'm more interested in seeing whether Bennett raises his ceiling with QB1 reps beyond G-Day. Yeah, so, I don't think it's unfair to look at Stetson Bennett and say, hey, if you want everyone to rally around you for the upcoming season, especially given the fact we didn't see much of Bennett in G-Day a year ago, come out and use the phrase QB1. I don't think it's unfair necessarily to ask Bennett to come out and be that QB1 guy. Clearly outplay Carson Beck. Clearly outplay Brock Vandagriff. I don't think it's unfair to necessarily do that. And so I would say that I probably have as much curiosity for Bennett as I do the other quarterbacks. I'm excited about seeing them all play for different reasons, but I don't disagree with your point of view on that. Let's see what else. Senior Dog 54 says 1967. Was that when Yastrzemski did the Triple Crown? Or I thought it was 67, not 78? Okay, that's my bad. I guess 78, you're getting late into his career. Maybe that's the case. Let's see what else. A couple more comments. Rick D says most excited to see Brock Vandagriff and Robinson on offense, Starks and Nyland Green on defense. Yeah, that should be fun. Mark Morris wants a well-balanced team that's good, great in every phase of the game. Says you can't sacrifice one area. Yeah, good, complementary balance is something I think that defined Georgia a year ago. Important to kind of define it that way for the upcoming year there as well. I think that's probably true. All right, one or two more. We'll get ready to get going. Really good comments. Ohio Dog always checks in with his customary good morning greeting. You love to see that. Randy Hall says a friend of mine is visiting every ballpark on his bucket list. I'd really like to do that. And I don't know why this isn't so much a thing in other sports, but, I don't have any desire to go to every NFL stadium. I wouldn't mind going to any of them, but I don't have a desire to visit them all. But there is something about, you watch these ballparks on TV and you just crave the chance to go see a game there. I've got a decent little list I've worked on here. Last year I got a chance to go to the Washington Nationals ballpark. It was unseasonably cold when I was there, but it was a pretty cool ballpark. The area around the stadium is kind of cool. And when you go to these places, that's one of the things that's the most interesting because you don't see that part on TV very much. But the area around the Nationals ballpark is really pretty cool. The stadium itself is probably fairly nondescript, but the area around there is kind of cool. So I've been there. I've been to Yankee Stadium. I've been to Fenway Park. I've been to Wrigley Field a few times, including the cool moment in 2017 when all the Georgia fans were there. I've been to San Francisco. Is that it for me? That may be. I've been to the new Comiskey in Chicago as well. So I've got a decent little list I've worked on. I'd like to have a lot more added to it. The ballpark in San Francisco is amazing. It really is amazing. Randy Hall says, I think that Joe Medwick was the last National League player to win the Triple Crown. Wow, that's really a long time ago. So it kind of goes back to the point we were making a little earlier. Yeah, good stuff. All right, what do you say we get started? There is, I think, kind of a weird mood around Georgia fans right now. I don't mean this in a bad way. I just think that there is a reality that probably hasn't been fully grasped as of yet, but I think we need to do that for a moment. I think it leads us into a fun G-Day conversation. And there is one simple thing that I'm very excited about seeing tomorrow that is quite different than maybe some of recent G-Days past. I'll explain that. Jeff Sintel will give us a list of recruiting visitors on hand for Saturday. Looking forward to that there too. Hoping for good news on the weather, obviously. And before we're done, and I'll admit this, I'm just doing this because it's weird, but there is a very odd accusation against a very big-name SEC coach. This is mostly funny. I don't know if it's true, but I can't say for sure it's not true. A very big name in the media has kind of pushed this, so we'll do that before we're all said and done. And a whole bunch of golden shoes to give out today there as well. So big-time stuff. We'll also do the Florida spring game there a little bit. A couple of pretty key takeaways from that last night. I wasn't really watching it, but I did read about it a good bit this morning, so I'll tell you about that as we roll on here. And we're late. We got to get going. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Kroger. And it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
So obviously the theme of today's show in so many ways is going to be a preview of G-Day, what we expect to see happen on Saturday. We'll do some of this from a recruiting standpoint with Jeff Sintel here in a little bit. There is a pretty simple thing that I'm kind of looking for from tomorrow, or I should say I'm excited about seeing tomorrow. And I think the remnants of this will show up, and it's a little bit different than maybe previous G-Days past. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But let me kind of begin this way. I think some of what's interesting about tomorrow is actually not what takes place between the white lines. I think some of what's interesting about G-Day tomorrow, assuming that, we have decent enough weather that it's kind of a normal experience, I think some of what's going to be interesting about being in Athens tomorrow for G-Day is the kind of mood around the game, the mood of the fans about being back in Sanford Stadium again. After all, the last time we were there, so many of us anyway, was in January when the parade and the championship trophy celebration was taking place. It was almost a surreal experience for many people because it was just such a happy day. So cool to be, that many people there in that moment celebrating this thing that we had craved for such a long time, Georgia winning a national championship. And in a lot of ways, because the chase for that had gone on as long as it did, 40 plus years, and you've heard all the jokes about that, it did, I think, in so many ways kind of give Georgia a little bit of an identity. Georgia fans, the way we all kind of gather together and kind of become this idea of DawgNation, not just the website, but the group of people that make up Georgia football fandom. The identity of DawgNation prior to this past January was a program that was really craving a national championship and really wanted that title. And unfortunately, there was kind of a pocket of those Georgia fans that probably had kind of come to expect the worst, bad luck to befall at like the worst possible moment. But that want, that desire to be national champions, that desire to put that trophy on the trophy case had really kind of come to define a lot of folks who we would think of as making up what we think of as DawgNation. And yet, starting tomorrow, that era is kind of over. And all of a sudden, I think tomorrow, on Saturday, when we show up for G-Day, or if you're watching on TV, we all, in some form or fashion, start to begin a brand new era for the program. And I think, and maybe your read on this is a little bit different than mine. Maybe your sense of this is maybe a little different than mine is. But I think right now, there's a little bit of a weirdness in the air of what does it mean to be not just defending national champions, reigning national champions, but the team that's kind of gotten that monkey off its back, the program, better said, that no longer has that huge, almost unreachable goal that it's chasing. All of a sudden, now that you've got that, how do you redefine yourself now that you've accomplished what for 40 plus years you'd been trying to do? And Georgia's by no means the first team in sports to have to do this. I remember, in the early 2000s when the Red Sox were first getting good. Red Sox had been clearly defined for a long time as kind of a lovable loser type team. They had the heartbreak in 78, essentially before I was born. I certainly remember the 86 World Series, the ball going through Bill Buckner's legs, and some of the other stuff that had happened over the years where the Red Sox were just dying to win a World Series, finally did that. Then all of a sudden, you kind of break through in a big way in 2004, and now all of a sudden you kind of go from being the lovable loser to, as big a payroll as anybody, bringing in big free agents all the time, winning multiple World Series. Now, instead of being the David trying to slay Goliath, now you're your own version of Goliath. And I think that did become a little weird for Red Sox fans there for a while. Chicago Cubs, much the same way, a few years later, finally broke through, won the World Series. They haven't had the same sustained level of success that the Red Sox once did, but all of a sudden, the thing that had defined Cubs fans for more than 100 years, hey, want to get back, win the World Series, it was a joke. Like when I was growing up in the 80s, movies made fun of this. Everybody talked about this, the fact that the Cubs would not win a World Series, had not won a World Series, and for a long time that remained true, but it's no longer true. They have done that, and so in the aftermath of that, there has been a need to redefine all of that. And for Georgia, kind of much the same way, it begins the task tomorrow, starting with kind of the unofficial lead into the 2022 season of now needing to redefine itself here a bit. And for whatever reason, college football doesn't really do the notion of lovable losers the way that like baseball would have with the Red Sox and the Cubs. That's just never quite been a thing for college football. So I don't know that Georgia necessarily had the lovable loser tab connected to it prior to all of this. But even if you had a temptation to want to do that, now you can't do that. Georgia is the bull of the woods. They are on top of the college football world. And so I think as Georgia fans show up for G-Day tomorrow and try to figure out, okay, so what does this mean going forward? I think it's important to note that just because Georgia has accomplished what it set out to do, that doesn't mean its accomplishing is done. That doesn't mean its accomplishing of things is necessarily over. And I almost get the sense there's an element of which, I've told you now before a few times, that I think that Georgia, as far as like the national conversation goes for the upcoming season, I think that Georgia is a little bit underrated, a little bit undervalued right now. For those of you who are thinking about like future bets and, national championship picks or playoff picks, something like that, I've kind of felt in comparison to some of the other teams that's out there that Georgia might actually be a pretty good play for the upcoming year. Maybe not a surprise to hear a Georgia host of a Georgia podcast say something along those lines, but I kind of feel that way. But I guess here's the other thing that I'm kind of starting to come to maybe notice for the upcoming season, this upcoming weekend with G-Day looming, and maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe you're feeling on this a little bit different than mine. But not only do I feel like that Georgia is maybe underrated from the national perspective by media and folks like that, I almost get the sense that for some Georgia fans, this team is also a little bit underrated right now. That there is that little bit of, hey, been there, done that. We got our national championship, and all of a sudden there's this natural expectation of, well, maybe this 2022 team will kind of go back to being what we've typically thought of Georgia as being, but I don't think it has to be that way, nor do I think mathematically many folks are expecting it to be that way. I mean, here's the simple point I want to make, and then we'll get ready to talk about some other stuff. I think as you show up to watch this Georgia team play on Saturday at G-Day, the dress rehearsal for the upcoming season, I think it's important to note that you are watching a team tomorrow that is very much in line to potentially win the national championship again in 2022. The ESPN FPI data came out yesterday, preseason. Georgia's ranked number 3. That's the same spot they were ranked a year ago. I think it becomes easy to forget this, that Georgia had a historic defense in 2021. That's why they won the national championship. They don't have that anymore. You're going to have to figure out something to do when you don't have that historic defense. But I don't know that necessarily people were talking as much about that historic defense before the season began last year. As I said before, it's not like it was obvious that Georgia would win the national championship. For the most part, most of the media was not doing so. If you'll remember, we had Peter Burns from the SEC Network on the show last summer because he was one of the few people that actually was saying at the time that Georgia was going to win the national championship. They were only preseason number 3 in the kind of analytics type stuff that I just mentioned. Well, that's the exact same spot that Georgia finds itself again here this year. I would say that Georgia's overall chances of winning the upcoming national championship aren't wildly different this season than they would have been a year ago, even though from the perspective of looking back on things, it seems like Georgia has so much to replace. There were actually big questions being asked about Georgia going into last season that were emphatically answered during the year, and possibly the same thing could happen this year as well. In fact, let me show you this here for a moment. I mentioned the ESPN FPI data for a moment. Now, listen, over the course of years, I've decided that I probably care less about some of this analytic stuff than I used to. The advanced stats, the baseball world kind of calls this sabermetrics, at least it used to. I used to be pretty interested in this stuff. I try to talk about some of that kind of stuff on the show. I've just decided that it's probably not worth the attention that I once gave it, kind of backed off of that a little bit. But at least from a conversational standpoint, sometimes it can be interesting. Let me show you this from ESPN Stats and Info. This is, according to their playoff predictor, the chances of making the playoff for the upcoming season. You see Ohio State at the top of the list. They have, according to ESPN, an 82% chance of making the playoff. Alabama comes next on that list. They have, according to ESPN, a 79% chance of making the playoff. But Georgia is number 3 on that list, according to ESPN, the playoff predictor, with a 73% chance of making the playoff. That is well ahead of anybody else in the sport. Clemson comes next at just 59. Texas, laughably, is after that at 21%. That may speak to the weakness of the Big 12 more than anything else. Notre Dame's at 18%. Obviously, they've gotten a free pass to the playoff before. Can't deny it. Couldn't happen again this year. Then you got Michigan at 15%. We saw how overrated they were a year ago. Oklahoma's at 13%, new coach there, don't forget that. Then you got Pitt at 10%, Utah at 5%. So some of this, list is obviously pretty laughable, but you do see a cluster of the top 3 teams in the country well ahead of everybody else, which does include Georgia at a 73% chance of making the college football playoff. Now you may say, well, BA, how do they get that number? What does that even mean? The honest truth is, I really don't know. I'm guessing that you probably don't know there as well. But generally speaking, I can't say that it's wrong. Generally speaking, when you look at the chances of Georgia being back in the playoff, given the schedule that it's playing, given the level of talent that it still has, I think all of a sudden you're looking at a team that I would say is more likely than not back in the college football playoff again. whether it be as an SEC champion or an SEC runner-up, kind of traveling the same kind of path it did a year ago, I'd say the odds are greater that Georgia is in the playoff this upcoming season than it's not. And then after that, we'll kind of wait and see what happens. So the bottom line here, and then we'll move on and talk about something different, is simply this: that tomorrow, Georgia starts the task of redefining itself. It's no longer the program that's been chasing a national championship. Kirby Smart is no longer the coach tasked with bringing that unobtainable goal to the Bulldogs. That's now been done. The page has been turned on that. And now when you start writing the next chapter of Georgia football lore, you start talking about Georgia winning one again, maybe even as soon as this upcoming season. And on G-Day tomorrow, I think you may see a glimpse of a few reasons why the possibility of that happening is far greater than maybe some have given it credit for being. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Kroger. And glad to have you with us today, no matter how you get to us, live on video, 10 a.m., Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. We also start at 9:45, what it's worth, with our first and 15 at DawgNation.com and on the DawgNation app. We're on the radio every day at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, and as a podcast wherever you find them, including the world-famous DawgNation.com, but also Apple, Spotify, and everything else in between. We're brought to you by Kroger here today. Now, tell you a true story. So we've had just a really busy time in our family the last couple of days, just a lot going on, various things. And sometimes what that leads to is when you're leading into a holiday like Easter, which we get a chance to enjoy this weekend, you're like down to the wire and you don't quite everything you need. And trust me when I tell you, there's all kinds of stuff that's going on in my house for Easter, a lot of painting of eggs and things along those lines. And my wife last night was able to stop in, went to Kroger, and she just finished off the entire list. I mean, I'm just telling you right now, when it comes to taking care of business, getting ready for Easter, we have already done that at Kroger here already this week. And so I invite you to do the same thing there as well. In fact, not only can you get the list finished off, you can save big there as well. About 30% on some of those Easter essentials like plush toys, housewares, decor, so much more. You can go in store and do your shopping on this, or you can find it out online, Kroger.com/Easter. Kroger.com/Easter for more on that. So for those of you getting dressed up on Sunday for the pictures, whatever else you got going on, certainly hope you're getting ready to enjoy a great Easter time of year. I love this time of year, love the chance to be with my family during all of that, and obviously with my DawgNation family tomorrow for G-Day. A little weird to have G-Day and Easter the same weekend. They have typically tried to avoid that. This year, I guess not able to avoid that, but going to be a great couple of days of football tomorrow, of Easter on Saturday, and of course, thinking about Good Friday, of course, here today as well. So all of that on tap for the weekend. Jeff Sintel coming up in a moment. We'll do more of the weekend with him, including from a recruiting standpoint of who you expect to see there, how that plays out. Some chatter about a couple of, pretty big name wide receivers on hand for the weekend. That's kind of cool stuff. So we'll do a lot of that with Jeff Sintel here in just a little bit. Before that, though, let me do a brief version of Around the Doghouse. And when I think about what I'm excited about seeing, by now we've talked about so much of this, right? We've talked about, the chatter around Eric Gilbert, what you hope to see from him. Really excited about that. Dominic Blaylock back from injury. Really excited about that. The fact that I think this Georgia running game this year could be really good, seeing in kind of a starring role, if you will, for Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh and, Deshaun Edwards. I'm very interested in all of that. But I think there is one thing that's almost like hiding in plain sight. It's almost somewhat invisible that to me, as a guy that cheers for this team, that wants Georgia to win games, there is something that I take comfort in right now for Georgia football that I think that is way different than maybe what some previous G-Days would have been. There is a level of stability with this program in one key area that I don't think has always necessarily been the case for Georgia. I'm talking about an offensive coordinator. I think it was a very big deal. And in fact, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking back to a year ago. If you'll remember last season, going into last year, when Georgia held on to Dan Lanning. Lanning could have taken a big paycheck and gone to Texas or whatever else. There had been some chatter he might become Kansas head coach at one point in time. But the fact that Lanning came back to Georgia last year, we treated that as a very big deal. We said, hey, that's a level of continuity that Georgia can really enjoy. And sure enough, helped pay off to the tune of a national championship for the Dogs last year. Well, now Lanning has moved on. But this year, I find myself feeling the same kind of way about Todd Monken coming back for year 3 as offensive coordinator. We're just in a day and age where keeping these coordinators for, multiple seasons like that is just not necessarily an easy thing to do, nor should it really be much of an expectation that you can keep a competent and capable offensive coordinator for 3 years. That just doesn't happen a lot. But now for Georgia, that's the case. And all of a sudden now you talk about an offense that has taken, in both of Monken's previous years, 2020 was a huge step forward from where 2019 had been. 2021 was a huge step forward offensively. Almost every statistic tells that story from where Monken's first year had been in 2020. Now it's coming back for 2022. So think about previous G days where, Georgia's breaking in a new offensive coordinator maybe, or trying to find a way to kind of kickstart an offense that maybe had been somewhat lackluster the previous seasons. And some of that conversation even predates Kirby Smart's time as Georgia head coach here. All of a sudden, that's not the situation for Georgia offensively. This was a team that played in the shadow of its defense a year ago. But to go back to analytics metric that we used off the top of the program, according to ESPN FPI, this was like a top 5 offense nationally a year ago. This is an offense that averaged about 40 points per game last year. They bring a lot of what they used for that success back for the upcoming season, including the mastermind who was pushing all the buttons that led to that success. And I think you have the real possibility that whether it be, guys like Gilbert and Blaylock coming back, guys like A.D. Mitchell taking the next step, incoming players who may have a chance to have their moment here, possibly even a transfer portal addition before the season comes around. One way or another, I think you're talking about a Georgia offense that has a chance to really be pretty spectacular for this upcoming season. And knowing that you show up for G-Day tomorrow with that level of stability in place where you get to just kind of be entertained by it, you don't have to be all that worried about it, I think that's actually pretty cool. In fact, one of the things that Kirby Smart was asked last week when he kind of doing his final press conference before G-Day was what Monken does bring to this team right now as he goes into his third year. And for Smart, it's pretty succinct. It comes right down to this, the fact that Monken knows what he wants to do. Here's what Smart says Monken brings to the table year 3 with the Dogs.
A plan. I think a big part of offense is like have an identity, believe in who you are, don't try to force your players into that. I'll be strong where you're strong and improve your weaknesses. Well, he knows what he wants to do. He knows how to package plays that work well together. Be who you are. And if your strength is at wide out, if your strength is at O-line, your strength is at tight end, your strength is at running back, your strength is at quarterback, use it. And I think he's done a good job of bringing consistency in those areas and accountability to that side of the ball.
I think that's really well said from Kirby Smart. There is a level of consistency that is there. You kind of know what you're getting game to game from a guy like Todd Monken offensively. And I do think that expectations ought to be high for the Dogs offense here this year. And I do believe that Monken is the most important reason why. And this is not new for me. I've told you before, even when we thought the Georgia quarterback was JT Daniels going into last season, that the presence of a capable offensive coordinator, for me, a system that works, was more important than the quarterback that executes the system. And all of a sudden now, the Daniels era has moved on. The Stetson Bennett era, we're in the midst of that. But the same thing to me remains true, that it's really Monken's influence. It's the play caller's influence that I think makes the machine hum in college football right now. And I do think the Georgia offense is in certainly very good hands. And seeing what Monken has in store for tomorrow, putting on a pretty good show, I would guess, with both the red team and the black team, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. That is Around the Doghouse. Let me remind you that we're going to have a bunch of fun ourselves tomorrow. I'm going to be live tomorrow morning at the Creature Comforts Tap Room. That's right there on Hancock Avenue. It's the old snow tire facility. We've been there before. We've done great things. But this time we're going to be there with our friends at the Players Lounge. So I'm really excited about that. To be there with them. We're going to be on video tomorrow, probably get going around 11 a.m. on video or so, but we're going to be there the entire time. The event itself starts around 10:30. So you can show up there. Aaron Murray's going to be there. Keith Marshall's going to be there. Champ Bailey's going to be there. A lot of former Georgia Lettermen going to be on hand. We'll be there having a good time. I'd love to say hello to you. And we'll do a live broadcast. We'll have some big-time interviews with some great former Georgia names. That's going to be really cool. We'll do that there coming up tomorrow before the game. So can't wait for that. And, of course, at our customary home at the UGA bookstore after the game there tomorrow, too. So we'll tell you more about all the big events of G-Day weekend coming up. But just go ahead and make plans to see us before the game for our Kroger kickoff live with the Players Lounge at Creature Comforts Tap Room coming up on Saturday morning. So we'll talk to you more about that then. But for now, also a lot of recruits on hand for Saturday. Big name visitors. A lot of folks looking forward to getting a glimpse of the Georgia Bulldogs here. Should be fun. Should be exciting. Let's find out more about that as we say hello to Jeff Sintel right now here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. Glad to have him, all of you, with us here today.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Well, hello to Jeff Sintel here. Fun to have him as part of the program. DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger. Jeff, also a big part of what we're doing for G-Day there tomorrow. Jeff, good morning to you. Thanks for being here today, and I'm sure you're like me, excited about being back between the hedges again tomorrow, excited about seeing some football, seeing some recruits, and just generally speaking, having a fun football conversation here as we get a glimpse of what 2022 may be about for these Dogs.
Brandon, good morning. I don't know how many great tee shots you've seen today. I don't know what we'll see tomorrow in Athens. The entry level for me about how the rings will happen might be pretty interesting if that actually happens tomorrow. But man, it's crazy. I was thinking about this today or earlier this week. It's already been 3 months since the national championship celebration. It's been more than 3 months. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, it is wild. So let me ask you this. So are they giving out rings tomorrow? Because somebody told me they were. I had a reason to believe they might not be, but I've also talked to a player or two that at one point in time was maybe planning on not being in Athens. Now they are planning on being in Athens, which will lead you to believe, okay, what does that mean? They are like do we know about the ring thing? Am I the only one that doesn't know this? Because I will have to say that I don't know this. What is the story there on that?
To the best of my knowledge, I don't think I just dreamed this earlier this week, but I thought I've heard someone say that they're expected to give them out between quarters tomorrow, and it's going to be like a lot of the NFL. Come on, Brandon. Like sometimes you got to put 1 + 1 and have that equal 2. There's a whole lot of Georgia guys that are planning to be in town tomorrow that maybe aren't doing anything NFL related. And when you think about it, how Kirby Smart likes distraction. He likes to avoid distractions on game days. And then you also got the other qualifier here that it might be very hard to get all these young men together at the same time again. I know someone had offered up the idea that they do it before the NFL season starts. I just think that's going to be very hard to do. That's going to be in a game situation. For me, I'm actually, if it does happen in front of the world, that's an interesting ring reveal to me. I would imagine that might have been the sort of thing that would have happened in a meeting room or behind the scenes or something like that. So if the fans get to see that, if the fans get to revel and bask and all that, I think that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, because if they don't do it tomorrow, at least on a Saturday, you'll never get them all in the same place again at the same time. It's just almost logistically impossible to do. Now, I do think it'd be semi-cool if, how they'll do the thing now where when guys have their off week in the NFL, they're almost always back in town. They'll call the Dogs. They'll be honored like between quarters. Yeah. I think you could do a series of ring giveaways where it's like every week a few more guys get their rings. I think that would be pretty cool. Just kind of a way to celebrate that, over and over. But given the fact that Georgia plays a neutral site game week 1, which is before the NFL season starts, that if you want to do a full team giveaway at the same time, if you don't do it tomorrow, if you plan on doing it publicly, it's just logistically impossible. You'll never get this entire team back in the same place again at the same time.
So I have a take about this, and Brandon, I'm going to say this. The bar has been raised by what the Atlanta Braves unveiled over the last 10 days. Now, Georgia's ring has to come within the distance of Stone Mountain of that majestic ring. Now, I know it's a professional ball team with deeper pockets and deeper resources versus a college team, and we're going to air quotes amateur athletics here. But if this Georgia ring doesn't have some hedges on it in I don't know, in your favorite emerald color, or if it doesn't have it doesn't display a visual hologram of the Ringo 6, the Chip 6, or the 80 Mitchell touchdowns, it's got to have something cool like this, because I didn't know we've advanced to the level of secret decoder rings or Dick Tracy watch where you can pop the lid on a ring open and it shows a diorama and it lights up with LED micro lights. So I would expect Georgia after 41 years that they didn't have as much time as the Braves to put this together with a turnaround. But I would imagine them to be pretty sneaking cool.
Yeah, I'm expecting like Eddie the Blind Squirrel to be encased in diamonds. If they want to do that, I'm more than happy to allow them to use our intellectual property there on that. If that's what they like to put on the ring, I'm more than happy for that to be used there for that. But I am very curious to see what they look like. I mean, obviously these rings over the course of the years just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I got no problem. Listen, this thing can be like brass knucks as far as I'm concerned. It can take up all 4 knuckles as far as I'm concerned. They've earned the right to make it as big as they want to make it.
Brass knuckles, that's pretty good. That's kind of like your wrestling stuff coming back. Instead of a ring, it's just going to be brass knuckles with maybe the diamonds encrusted on the side are not actually diamonds. They're actually crystallized gator tears, something like that. I mean, that would be ideal for your program and your format.
No, I think that's exactly right. Let me ask you one more thing before we kind of get into some of these recruiting guys. How much does it impact the list this weekend that the game is Easter weekend? For some fans, it's a little bit of an issue. I guess the forecast doesn't look great, although I'm not an expert at reading meteorological reports, so I don't really know what to expect tomorrow as far as like the rain goes. But how does some of that logistical stuff impact who is and who won't be there on Saturday?
Well, Brandon, it's always a logistical, snafu, nightmare, whatever you want to call it. Georgia's actually still competing with Alabama. I think they're having their spring game tomorrow. I believe South Carolina's having their spring game tomorrow. Yeah. There's Easter, Brandon, but it's always something, whether it's the Masters or there's always something that Georgia's spring games are in conflict for because it's, spring. And I think the main thing here's what's different, Brandon, and it's been so long that I think people have gotten back into what's comfortable and the norm. But remember, a year ago, recruits, if they wanted to visit for G-Day, they had to do so as a patron. And so we're still, people don't realize this. I need to, kind of jog some memories here. Recruits have seen Georgia so much since the dead period opened back up. Weekends of great visits and great visitors and everything else that, it's another chance for them to come see Georgia, but they've got a lot of these young men are planning their official visits to Georgia in June or maybe even earlier than that. And maybe they just went to Georgia 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it's going to be a good list. It's going to be some 5-star names on there, but I don't think it's going to be I'll borrow another reference that I know is near and dear to you. I don't think it's going to be a WrestleMania 3 card at the Silverdome type long list of marquee recruits on Saturday.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the 5 stars that are going to be there. I guess Jaden Wayne, that's a 5-star from way out. What was he from? Way out west, Washington. Like he's coming in. So you do have some 5-star type guys who are going to be here over the course of the weekend, correct?
Well, this is a good one, Brandon. We're going to test some DawgNation top fandom right here with the Jaden Wayne story. So Tacoma, Washington, where he's from, he actually trains with the same organization, Ford Sports Performance, that sent Keely Ringo to Arizona and then to Georgia. Keely Ringo, most might know, is actually a Washington area native, Tacoma area native, but it's 2,707 miles away. So I'm gonna get everybody out there to do this quick litmus test. Were you in Sanford Stadium the last time Georgia played a football game? Now that was Charleston Southern way long time ago for Senior Day. And then do you plan to be at G-Day on Saturday? So if you cannot say 2 for 2, well, then Jaden Wayne's got something on you, friend, because he's going to be at G-Day on Saturday. He actually gets in today. He's going to be there through Sunday. And this is really a visit, Brandon, where, first of all, he's a phenomenal athlete, 5-star DL. There was a point last year where he wasn't sure how much Georgia loved him, but then he really got sure after some miscommunication. The staff, Brandon, really noticed when an out-of-region, out-of-time zone cross-country recruit comes and takes an official visit to Georgia, not 1 but 2 last year, on their own dime, then that shows that this young man is not about taking some photos and just trying to get his picture in a Georgia jersey for his recruiting, tour stops around the world type, photo spread on their Instagram. There's some realness there to Georgia and Jaden Wayne, and I think this is a chance where Georgia can make sure they get an official visit, one of his 5 official visits, qualifying all that by saying, my friend, that Alabama is really huge in that recruitment. Okay. So is Oregon and Miami to some extent. So I think Georgia's really running with some viable contenders there for Jaden Wayne. but it is a very good indicator. This trip has been planned for a very long time, and he's coming out to Georgia again, bringing the family again. So things can only get better. He's really connected with Chidera Uzodiribe, the new outside linebackers coach. Georgia sees him as an outside linebacker edge prospect, even though that he's ranked by the industry at 6'5", 240 pounds as a defensive line prospect. Great athlete, Brandon. He was a tight end. He's a wide receiver. He played some linebacker. He played some defensive end. I love this part, though, Brandon. He punted for his high school team.
How about that?
So anytime you can get a 5-star edge that actually does double or triple duty as a punter, you know you got a really good athlete.
And we've seen Alabama, of course, pull 5-star prospects out of the state of Washington before. It didn't work out all that well, but they've won in that state before when it comes to recruiting. Also, I guess one of the narratives that's out there right now when you start looking ahead is pretty good day tomorrow for Georgia when it comes to like wide receivers on hand. I guess there's been some chatter about like Hakeem Williams and some other pretty big name wide receivers potentially being in the building. Is that the sense that you get, that for a position of need for Georgia, that tomorrow may be a little bit of a day to showcase the program to them?
Well, I think the guys that are planning to be in town, I think Gabe Harris is a name, another 4-star edge out of Valdosta, one of those down south Georgia boys. Perhaps the most intriguing guy to me is Samuel Mpemba. He's at IMG Academy, Brandon, and some folks in college football think he's a wide receiver. That's why he's rated as an athlete. Georgia views him as an outside linebacker, another 6'4", 230 pound type, remarkable athlete that can do a lot of things. Uzodiribe is also recruiting him hard. And, you know, side road here, Brandon, Chidera Uzodiribe is absolutely killing it on the recruiting trail. He's getting Georgia in with the folks that are the high priority targets. I think he has radically changed. And this is maybe something Dan Lanning was doing later in his career at Georgia last cycle, where Georgia's going after a different type of athlete, that 6'5", 6'6" guy. See Darius Smith that they just signed to play the outside linebacker position. So that's about, you know, maybe 20 pounds heavier and maybe 3 inches taller and longer than the Nolan Smiths and the Mikhail Shermans, the MJ Shermans Georgia was recruiting a couple years ago. I think Georgia with receivers, I mean, Brandon, that young Manning from New Orleans can join the class, and that could be all great and all, and I'm sure it would be celebrated and trumpeted till the days are come and gone. But the receivers that need to follow that young man are going to make or break this class. I got to mention a name here, Brandon, that I am absolutely stunned by what's happening here, and this is a young man, Anthony Evans III. He's out of Texas. Now, he's not planning to visit Georgia until this summer. He's currently a Sam Pittman, Arkansas commit.
Okay.
But Quincy Carter took him to UGA a couple weeks ago. He loved it. He's got some family ties to Georgia. Brandon, remember how when everybody got so excited about what Malachi Starks was doing in track season a year ago?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this guy, Anthony Evans III, Brandon, he really doesn't even run the 100. He's trying to run the 200. He ran a 10.27 legal 100 meters this week. This same week, he also long jumped 24 feet and like 3 inches. Super impressive athlete. I mean, he is in the 99.9th percentile of high school athletes when you can run a 10.27 and you can long jump 24 feet, and you can also earn an SEC football scholarship offer. That's an intriguing name for wide receiver that I want to, you know, kind of park in the back door a little bit for a lot of guys, because Quincy Carter's involved. He took him and kind of showed him Georgia. He has interest in Georgia. There's some family background, and Brendan, that's as fast and athletic as it gets. That's Arian Smith fast. That's C.J. Smith fast. But you've also got a young man that can do that long jump as well. And Brendan, whenever I hear of athletes that are running the 100 and 200 that well, and also long jumping like that, there's really one standard for me with that, and that's Champ Bailey, because Champ Bailey had held a lot of these records at Georgia. I think Champ Bailey held the long jump record at Georgia still until Matthew Bowling broke it recently over the last couple of years. The wide receivers, man, are so vital. I wrote about this week about how offensive tackle, which was already a priority, absolutely has to be the priority of this class, not just the wide receivers, because if you look at it very closely, I expect a brilliant year from Warren McClendon again. I expect a great year from Broderick Jones. And I think both of those guys will be 2023 NFL draft prospects pretty high. Should that, 2022 season come to be, which is what it's trending. And Brandon, that would mean 0 starting tackles returning for next season. And really, suddenly Georgia's a little bit light on that elite All-American type tackle coming in the pipeline. We will look back on it and say it was very, very important for Georgia to sign Ernest Green III last year when most of the country thought he was a guard. And Ernest Green was, I wouldn't say stubborn, but he was very keen on saying, I'm going to try my darndest to be a tackle at Georgia. And from the reports of what he's done so far in spring ball, he really looks like a tackle of the future at Georgia.
I think that's right. Let me finish with this because I'm on a slightly different topic. Obviously, Kirby tries to downplay the first-year players, those early enrollees, and who may see at G-Day on Saturday. But I know on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger on Wednesday, you did spotlight some of those guys that you do think are worth a little bit of extra attention on Saturday. So let's keep that conversation going here right now. Who are you looking closely at seeing? Guys that you covered as recruits will get a chance to debut as UGA guys tomorrow.
Number one, you got to think about the punter, Brett Thorson. If anybody wants to be like a smart guy at your tailgate and say, out of all those young guys, I think this guy's going to make an impact. Well, the name better be Brett Thorson, the first name out of everyone's mouth, because he's the Thunder from down under. The mighty Thorson swings a big leg out of Australia. And physically, the physical gifts as well as the maturity, I think he's 22 years old. It's going to rival what Georgia fans were accustomed to seeing the last 4 years with Jake Camarda. Now, do I think he's going to have it dialed in? His accuracy, his directional kicking, his booming, hang time and all that. I don't think all of that will be quite there yet because he's only been a punter for like 2 or 3 years now. But Brett Thorson, to me, is the most likely impact contributor because I think he's going to start this fall at punter for Georgia. And then the names that trickle in, you're going to watch for number 13. Number 13 is going to be unlucky for opposing offenses. Eventually, at Georgia, that's Mykel Williams. Brandon, I did some numbers on Mykel recently, and really there's only 3 guys that Georgia has ever signed, according to the composite all-time rating under Kirby Smart, that were higher rated coming in than Mykel Williams. One of those was Justin Fields. One of those was Nolan Smith. The other was Keely Ringo. Aside from that, Mykel Williams came into Georgia higher rated, also with an accolade of being the Maxwell Defensive Player of the Year for National Defensive Player of the Year, coming into Georgia. That's another jersey to look for. Number 4, that's Oscar Delp. He's looked great this spring at times. I don't know if he'll have the blinding speed that Brock Bowers showed last year as a freshman for Georgia, but I think he's going to be a dependable and viable red zone weapon. I think everybody else, under the early enrollee type guys, the type of guys people want to see. I'm going to mention number 71, Ernest Green III again, as a guy that's caught up a lot of attention. And then Brandon, think very closely and imagine what Dalen Everett might be for Georgia. That's number 6. That's the 5-star that was going to Clemson until Brett Venables shook up that situation with the Lincoln Riley move and took the Oklahoma job. And then Clemson lost 3 5-star commitments, 4 5-star All-American commitments defensively that were really connected to Venables. He became a Georgia Bulldog. He's going to wear number 6. Brandon, if you think about it, Georgia, even with Julian Humphrey coming to this summer to Georgia, I don't know if he's an outside boundary corner, more of a star type guy. And then you've got, Jaheim Singletary coming in as well. But Georgia, even though it was a great cornerback recruiting class, the outside lockdown boundary corner, I don't know if Georgia has a whole lot of the player assets there that they would like to have. Another name to throw in there that I've been hearing about him being physical, size, and it's one of those things that Georgia stresses that camp evaluation for the guy. Ja'Cory Thomas was a guy that once Georgia got a chance to see him run and hit out of the secondary, they jumped on him really quick and they took his commitment. And that's another name that has had a very good spring so far. All that, Brandon, and I said all this about all these freshmen, and I know you're going to be like, well, what about Eric Gilbert? What's Eric Gilbert going to look like on Saturday? I think Gilbert is losing some weight. I think he needed to lose some weight. I think when you watch him and when you watch him get a chance to shag some balls, you're going to get some glimmers, and you're going to get some of those visions of the Gatorade National Player of the Year from a couple years ago from the state of Georgia. I think he's a very adept receiver. I think Georgia's got him working at his natural position at tight end. And I think he's going to be very, very tough to deal with for Georgia down the line.
Jeff, great stuff. Thanks for being here. Looking forward to seeing you in Athens tomorrow for G-Day. A lot of great coverage on tap all day long. And we'll chat with you again here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger very soon as well.
All right, man. I'm trusting you. I'm bringing my raincoat and my rain gear tomorrow, Brandon. Don't let me down.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks a lot.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Jeff brings up a pretty good point. If it is going to rain, I got to go try to figure out where my raincoat is. Make sure I've got that ready to go for tomorrow. Good stuff from Jeff Sintel, and we'll get ready to transition now to the rest of the SEC here as we're cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. You know, we have got a Royal Caribbean cruise that we've got coming up, and we invite you to have your own Royal Caribbean cruise there as well. Probably now too late to be on board with us. We have a lot of folks who will be on board. I'm excited about being with all of you. It's going to be a great time. And if you couldn't do that, go ahead and live vicariously through us right now, but then make plans to be on board your own ship here coming up very soon. As we head towards the summer, this is a great time to be back on the seas again with Royal Caribbean. And, here's my invitation. In an audience the size of ours, we have all different kinds of folks when it comes to their relationship with cruising. A lot of you have been on cruises many times. In fact, I hear from a lot of you all the time who are pretty regular, avid cruisers. For some of you, you're either cruising for the first time or maybe for the first time in a long time. And to that particular group right there, my advice to you is, maybe go out of the port that we're going out of when we leave coming up on April 25th. Get on one of those ships that goes out of Port Canaveral. The reason why I recommend Port Canaveral is it's just down the road from Orlando. If you're like me here in the Atlanta area, that's a very easy drive to get there. And it's just probably the most convenient thing. And maybe if you're a first-time cruiser, maybe first time in a long time, you want to experience some of the really cool things that Royal Caribbean has going on right now, think about one of those 3 or 4 night sailings. That's what we're doing when we go on Independence of the Seas coming up on April 25th. But you get a chance to enjoy a lot of really cool itineraries. A lot of those do include Perfect Day, Coco Cay, which you've heard me talking about before. Like, for instance, we're going to Nassau in the Bahamas, which I think is a really fun port to visit. I've done some really cool snorkeling excursions there. I've done, Paradise Island. You want to go over and see Atlantis and some of that kind of stuff while you're there. You can do all that in Nassau. And then after that, Perfect Day, Coco Cay, which you got to understand is exclusive to Royal Caribbean cruise vacations. It's a private island that's only for those on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. There's a dock, you land right there. You don't have to tender over, which some of the private islands you sometimes have to do. You don't have to do that at Perfect Day, Coco Cay. You get a chance to just kind of go right there. You enjoy the thrill side, the chill side, and everything else that Perfect Day Coco Cay is all about. So this is a great time to do that. We're going to be on board here pretty soon, and you can be on board there yourself. Check out my friends, the Cruise and Vacation Authority, if you want to learn more about that. The Cruise and Vacation Authority, they'll help you get booked up for a great Royal Caribbean cruise vacation here in 2022. All right, couple of things. Georgia's got its spring game tomorrow. Florida had its spring game last night. I think there's one really big takeaway from what Florida had going on last night, maybe a couple of other smaller takeaways. It was a big night last night for quarterback Anthony Richardson. His numbers were good. His team won the game 34-0. But here's what else I thought was also interesting when the game was over with. That Richardson was praised pretty heavily by Coach Billy Napier. This was not something that Dan Mullen always did with Richardson, or really always did with Emory Jones. Last year at the end of spring, I think Mullen struck a little bit of a non-specific tone about what his quarterback situation was going to be. I think it's a very different vibe around Florida right now with the new coach, Billy Napier. It's pretty obvious to me, based on what both Napier said last night and what Richardson did. I didn't watch the game. I just read about it this morning. I was watching baseball for the most part last night. But pretty obvious that Richardson had a good day. It's a pretty obvious thing that Napier in Florida views him as their starting quarterback right now. That means the odd man out here is Jack Miller, the transfer from Ohio State. It appears that he's in line to be the backup. It does not sound like Miller had a great spring for Florida, not really making much of a push in the way towards the starting job. So part of what happened for Florida last night was not just a chance to see the new Napier Gators on the field, but I think it was Napier really looking to use that moment last night to build the confidence of Richardson. We've told you before that a lot of these spring games sometimes take on a little bit of a made-for-TV air to them. And I think that some of what Florida did last night, not that it manufactured the performance from Richardson, I don't think that was necessarily the case, but certainly the game itself, the moment itself, was an attempt to manufacture some confidence around Richardson to really make him be the guy for the Florida program. And I think that's probably what Florida accomplished last night. They also had a pretty good crowd here last night, 40,000 or so on a Thursday night. It's probably not a bad crowd there for that. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting about the aftermath of the game is it does not sound like things are great right now for DeMarcus Bowman, the former Clemson 5-star running back signee who transferred to Florida. But for now, it seems like he's almost on the verge of being overtaken on the depth chart by a running back that came to Florida from Napier's previous program there at Louisiana. So kind of interesting there that this is a Florida team that has not really run the ball very well in a long time. That was just not really after having been a pretty important focal point of the Mullen era in Mississippi State, never really became that big a part of what he did there at Florida. Obviously, that's one of the things that Billy Napier is going to be tasked with trying to change. But one of those high-profile transfers from a couple of years ago, in the case of Bowman, it seems like the transfer running back out of Louisiana may be ahead of him on the depth chart right now. So interesting stuff coming out of the Florida game last night as they put their first spring under Napier in the books. I saw where former Alabama wide receiver, this is a guy we've talked about now a couple of times the last few days, Ajayi Hall, who was pretty obviously in Nick Saban's doghouse. That's kind of an old school phrase to use, but it's pretty obvious that Hall had really fallen out of favor with Nick Saban. Saban just basically subtweeted him 1,000 times with some of the comments that he used. Eventually, Hall was suspended for a violation of team rules. He was already kind of flirting with transferring than he did. And I guess Hall's first visit upon entering the portal is to Texas. And I told y'all one of these days this week that Texas is just a program that cultivates a lot of drama. It's part of the reason why I don't think Arch Manning would go to Texas. He may go to Alabama, but I don't believe Manning will go to Texas because I think that Texas is just too dramatic. It's a little bit too much of a drama farm for a guy like Manning. And the fact that a guy like Hall, who clearly did not fit into the picture at Alabama at all, I don't think that Georgia would have come within 100 feet of Hall in the transfer portal. But the fact that like Texas is leaping at the chance to bring him in, this to me once again just feels like a very Texas thing to do. And listen, I don't know Hall's story. I don't know what happened for him in Alabama. I can't speak expertly on why it was that he never quite clicked on that roster and fell out of favor with Saban to the degree that he did. I can't tell you why that happened. All I can tell you is it did happen because we saw all the aftermath of that. And the fact that Texas is not scared of any of that just sort of speaks to the level of drama they are comfortable with there. And I think part of the reason why that Texas year after year, regardless of who the head coach is, seems to underperform compared to expectations is because of that level of comfort they have with drama. They are just very happy being a dramatic program. And drama and success in college football don't always coexist well together. So we'll make that, kind of a cruise around the SEC thing here. Let me also say this so we keep the conversation going, that this is another kind of SEC-style story here, and I kind of teased this off the top of the program a little bit. And admittedly, I'm probably kind of buying into my own version of soap opera drama when I get into this, but it just seemed like kind of an odd thing worth bringing up here near the end of a show on a Friday. So let me see if I can explain all of this. There has been a very weird overlap this week between LSU and Notre Dame. And not all of this necessarily has to do with Brian Kelly, who used to work for the Fighting Irish. Early, if you're watching a video, you see Kelly doing some of the goofy dancing type stuff. But earlier, I guess it was over the weekend, Marcus Freeman, the head coach at Notre Dame, brought in former LSU head coach Ed Orgeron to speak to the Fighting Irish. And Notre Dame made a big deal about promoting this. And, Orgeron gave a fiery speech about how, I don't know when it's going to happen, but with this staff, this team, you are going to win it all. Notre Dame touts Ed Orgeron is saying. I mean, remember this. It's a little bit weird in and of itself that Notre Dame is kind of hyping Orgeron here. For the most part, he resigned in disgrace from LSU. The fact that he's being treated as speaker with gravitas there at Notre Dame so quickly is in itself a little bit weird. But nonetheless, that's what happened. He's got a relationship with Freeman. He's touting Notre Dame to eventually win the national championship. So the aftermath of that is this. Are you familiar with who Pat McAfee is? McAfee, I know him as the color commentator for SmackDown, who also wrestled on WrestleMania, but he's a very huge presence in terms of hosting a show, on video and podcasts, things like that. He's a very big kind of new media presence in the world of sports, very popular. And McAfee, I guess, was tipped off to something related to Brian Kelly, the old Notre Dame coach, now at LSU, about what might be a burner account and what might be some bad blood for Kelly, the old Notre Dame coach, but the new coach, Marcus Freeman, despite the fact that Kelly hired Freeman as his defensive coordinator last year. Let me show you this on the screen, then I'll let you hear from Pat McAfee. This is what was sent to McAfee that apparently got included on Brian Kelly's Instagram story. Now, there's a guy named Robbie Espin, who I don't know. This is just a football follower, who says, this is what Brian Kelly just posted and deleted to his Instagram story. And it's a tweet from a guy named Stinky173025153, who says that everyone is connected with sources inside the current program knows that the Notre Dame athletic director is retiring in 2 years. That's Jack Swarbrick, along with the president. He says Jack wanted to please the people, so he didn't search for a coach and hired Marcus. Hope he made the right choice, but I doubt it. And this same Twitter account, this Stinky whatever, has had like one other tweet in the past, which was also a tweet like ripping Marcus Freeman, basically saying that high school coaches know that he's not up to the task of being Notre Dame's head coach or whatever else. And so what McAfee was saying on his show, and we obviously can't confirm this, McAfee can't either, but McAfee was kind of questioning about whether or not that this Stinky 1-2 whatever might be a burner account for new LSU coach Brian Kelly airing a grievance against the guy that took over for him at Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman. This is Pat McAfee from his show this week. Take a listen to this.
You think to yourself, well, there's no way, that Brian Kelly would be this obvious. So then you have to go check Stinky 173025153. Who do they follow? Who are their followers? So you look at who they're following. The first person that they are following, Brian Kelly.
Wow, okay.
So then they follow Brian's son, Brian's daughter, Brian Polian, who's a special teams coordinator. I don't know. He went to LSU with him. He was with him in Notre Dame. I know him from back in Colts days, basically, and he's a special team guy, and basically everything else associated with the Tigers down there. So you automatically assume to yourself, there's no way Brian Kelly would be running a burner account just burying Coach Freeman. Right? That wouldn't be happening.
No way. No.
But then he screenshots it allegedly and puts it on his own Instagram story accidentally, and then he has to delete it down. We don't know if that's true because we didn't catch it when it was live up there, but somebody reported it, and that picture looks pretty damning, but the internet can Photoshop. So is Brian Kelly Stinky 173025153?
So listen, I don't know here what's true and what's not. Here's what I do know. Brian Kelly needs to be very careful. This is like the third pretty weird story that's happened for Kelly since being an LSU coach. You're watching a video, you see some of the goofy dancing. I don't make too big of a deal about that. That's one of those things where I think he's trying to be so bad it's good. I don't think he succeeds, but the dancing thing I think is just, we see a lot of coaches do some version of that. But the fake accent thing was horrendous. That was a major misstep, and Kelly's attempt to explain that after the fact was not very good either. And all of a sudden now you've got a very prominent, million-plus follower type guy in the sports media landscape suggesting that Kelly may have been using a burner account to air some dirty laundry about the guy who took over from him at Notre Dame. Brian Kelly needs to be very careful. There's a very good story up right now by Ross Dellinger at Sports Illustrated about Kelly in Louisiana, the culture shock of the Midwestern coach, New England background, coming down here, not just to the South, but Louisiana, which is kind of its own separate culture. And there are a lot of people who speak very candidly about how, it was kind of a tense situation for Kelly when he first kind of came down here, maybe a little bit of an awkward exchange with a recruit or two, and all of a sudden now Kelly's trying to figure all of this out. The LSU program is one that wins national championships. They have with the previous three head coaches who've been there. This is a program that's capable of doing it on its own. It doesn't need saving, but Kelly brings the kind of ego where you almost wonder, does he damage his own chance of having the kind of success the typical LSU coach has? I have to say I'm pretty fascinated by this right now. I'm pretty fascinated by the notion that Kelly could just simply blow all of this up because of his own ego here. And I don't know if he's using a burner account to rip on Marcus Freeman or not, but I don't know that he isn't either. So I don't know. Pretty odd times all the way around there. Let's also do this, remind you that this weekend is a great time to be in Athens. I told you about some of the stuff we're doing tomorrow morning. but also at the UGA bookstore, which is where we'll be after the game on Saturday for our DawgNation postgame show, and that's always a lot of fun. But in addition to that, there are 2 big autograph signings I want to make sure that you are a part of for the weekend. First of all, starting on, that's today, from 4 to 6 p.m. at the UGA bookstore, which is right next to the Tate Student Center. Remember, you've got 2 great former Dogs, Thomas Davis, Isaiah Wynn on hand, and you've also got a guy that could be the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming NFL draft, Trayvon Walker, there as well. Now, $30 for each autograph, and when you buy the autograph, they're going to give you a free 5x7 photos. In other words, if you want to get something signed, the UGA bookstore will give you something to get signed, that 5x7 photo, get a chance to get that autograph for $30. Trust me when I tell you, the Walker autograph's about to be worth a whole lot more than that, almost right away. And Davis is a great former Dog. Isaiah Wynn was there as well. Get you some Rose Bowl stuff signed by him, maybe. And then on Saturday, tomorrow, 3 members of the national championship team going to be on hand there as well. Jamari Salyer, Quay Walker, and Justin Schaefer. Same deal. $30 for the autograph. They'll give you the 5x7 photo to get signed if you'd like to get that. That is an incredible opportunity to really celebrate with some guys that just brought home the national title and be with them. I think that's really great. I think that's a really great thing to be able to see both today from 4 to 6 p.m., tomorrow from 10 a.m. till noon. 6 former Dogs, 4 of them from the national championship team, all on hand there at the UGA bookstore. You can go to UGAbookstore.com if you want to find out more details, but just go. It's right there next to Tate Student Center, right across from the stadium. That is going to be a lot of fun. Let me also give you some golden shoes here. We'll hold off on the music just simply because we got a few of these we want to give out today. Let me start with the first one here. So yesterday, one of the things that I did was kind of put out on Twitter about a very cool thing they hung outside of our studio here, which was, a nice kind of framed look at some of the AJC DawgNation field editions. We give those out on the field after the game, and also a lot of fans had a chance to get their own commemorative version of those newspapers after Georgia won the national championship. I had a kind of nice, outside of our studio, they put a very nice frame version of all of that. I shared that on social media, and a lot of you were kind enough to kind of share some of that with me yourself. Let me show you Stephen Kraft here, who's got a really cool thing. He's got actually some of those field editions framed. He's got Uga biting the Auburn wide receiver. That's framed. Some other good stuff there as well. So I love to see guys like Stephen enjoying themselves here and finding a way to celebrate their national championship there with UGA. So good stuff from Steven. We'll make him a golden shoe winner for today. Our buddy Brian at Georgia Boy 1900, much the same way. Very nice setup down in his basement. He's got a lot of those same things hanging on his wall. The big Georgia G right down there, what looks to be kind of a nice basement bar area. Cool lighting. Very well done by him there as well. So good job to O'Brien. And then Drew Allingslam also sends this there as well. Look at his setup. He's got the national championship logo there on the wall. Lots of nice frame photos, an entire collection of helmets. It almost looks like something you see at the College Football Hall of Fame. Lots of it appears to be signed baseballs. And look at those pylons. Those are autographed pylons, mini helmets, whole collection of big-time full-sized helmets. Great job there by Drew, he says I need to step it up if that's all I've got, and he shows me what he has. That's really very impressive by Drew. We'll give him a golden shoe there as well. And then finally, our buddy Mad Dog also weighs in too with the Florida spring game having taken place last night. Mad Dog says, how about a rare photo from the Florida spring game? Hashtag Gator Hater. It's the old image of the Three Stooges with Florida logos on them. Yeah, it's a little bit like what that Florida spring game probably looked like to a lot of Georgia fans last night. We will give Mad Dog a golden shoe there as well. And we'll remind you as you get ready to enjoy some great fun here this weekend. You're doing some tailgating stuff tomorrow. Great way to do all of that with our friends at the Finish Long Drink. Talking about beautiful weather right now. We've had great weather the last couple of days. Hopefully it'll turn out to be pretty good tomorrow. But when you're outside enjoying good fun with good friends, the Finish Long Drink goes great with that. It's just a great pairing with football. It's easy to drink. It looks like a beer because it's in a can, but it's not. It's a ready-to-drink cocktail that comes right there in a can. You pop the top, you can pour it into a glass, you can drink it straight out of the can and just enjoy it. You like to mix drinks, you don't have to mix it yourself, though. You can get this from the Finish Long Drink, whether it's the blue can, which is traditional, has the gin kick, the grapefruit flavor. You got Long Drink Cranberry, Long Drink Strong, 8.5% alcohol by volume, Long Drink Zero, no carbs, no sugar, Really fun stuff from the Finnish Long Drink. You're playing golf. It's at a lot of golf courses. You're at bars, especially in the Athens area. You can find some there. Or if you want to go to a beverage store and just have some to enjoy at home, if you go to thelongdrink.com and put in your zip code, you can find out where you can pick up some today. But trust me when I tell you, when you try the Finnish Long Drink, you're going to enjoy it. So check out The Long Drink online at thelongdrink.com and enjoy yourself some Finnish Long Drink as we head towards the weekend. So can't wait to see you tomorrow. Once again, a reminder for us, before the game, we'll do Kroger Kickoff there at the Creature Comforts Tap Room. That's going to be a good time tomorrow. So I'll be there, Creature Comforts Tap Room. The Players Lounge is going to be on hand there as well. That means you're talking about Aaron Murray and you're talking about Keith Marshall. You're talking about Champ Bailey. Big events there all day tomorrow, starting at 10:30. They've also got a huge thing today with their golf tournament and their event tonight coming up at Silver Dollar. So they've got a lot going on here this weekend. I'm looking forward to being with them there tomorrow. And, of course, UGA Bookstore's got those autograph signings for you tonight and tomorrow. That's going to be great. Games at 1 p.m., and then we'll be at the UGA Bookstore again when it's all said and done for our DawgNation post-game show there as well. So we hope to bring you a lot of interviews tomorrow. We're going to bring you a lot of reaction to what we see there on the field and having a good time doing all of that. Very, very good stuff, and a nice graphic there by our buddy Michael to kind of wrap up the week there on that front. So can't wait to see you there for that. By the way, speaking of the lousy, stinking Gators, don't let their spring game distract from the fact it's been 4,845 days since they have won a national championship, and they're going to take another loss to Georgia 197 days from right now. That is our Gator Hater Countdown. We will see you in Athens tomorrow and back here on Monday for DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. We'll look forward to talking to you then. And on video. Time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Of course, R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. You can trust R.S. Andrews to do that for you today. All right, we'll take your comments on Facebook. I'll start there, and then we'll go to the other platforms, including YouTube and DawgNation.com. And then we'll get ready to roll out of here on a Friday. And hope you're all getting ready to have a good time. Can't wait to see you there for that. All right, here we go. Let's see what else. A lot of Facebook folks kind of checking in here. Miriam Corbin says when she gets to her goal weight, got to lose 5 more pounds, she's going to try a Finnish Long Drink. Well, Miriam, I hope you enjoy that. And I think you look great the way that you are, but congratulations on the success there. That's great to see. Great to see. Matt Rugavino on the subject of Brian Kelly being at least second choice for LSU. He may have been third choice, right? I mean, clearly Jimbo Fisher would have been their first choice, and, reports were they threw a lot in the direction of Lincoln Riley and ended up landing with Brian Kelly, which is a big-name coaching hire, but, it's not like Kelly was their first choice. Moose Thames says, if I sent you a video of me jumping off my bed, could it be Golden Shoe? Well, first of all, I don't want to encourage you to do anything that might get you hurt, but I'd say there's plenty of potential there, for sure. Bill Sanders says a northern Midwestern coach doesn't usually do well in his first stint in the Deep South. Yeah, I mean, a guy like Urban Meyer obviously did at Florida, but other guys, it's not always the easiest fit. And, here's the thing. If you're just a normal coach who does normal things, at a place like LSU, you are probably going to win. LSU coaches typically do. Now, they don't always sustain that success, but they typically win. But if you do something to upend the natural progression because you're such an egomaniac that you can't stop making it be about you, then all of a sudden you thwart what would have been potentially just a natural progression towards a national championship. So that's kind of the thing that Brian Kelly's got to worry about is that, who knows what, happening here with the, Instagram story thing or whatever else. Who knows what that is? But we do know that he faked the accent and he didn't necessarily have a great explanation after that was all said and done. I thought that some of the post antics on that actually kind of made it a bigger deal. I mean, it's pretty clear that he was trying to do something he didn't quite succeed at doing, or just didn't have a very human explanation for it all. So yeah, I mean, like Brian Kelly does not. He may have no shortage of admirers, but in terms of people who actually seem to enjoy being around him, I don't know that list is quite as long. So, be careful at a place like LSU where your ability to really engage with people is going to be paramount. Let's see what else. A lot of funny stuff in here. Once again, there are a couple of like hidden comments, and I don't understand that because they're just normal comments, and I didn't hide them, so I don't really know how that happened. So if you ever see a comment hidden in here, it's not for me, and I don't know that there's any reason why it would be. Jay, always thankful. Riv says, do you think that Texas A&M is the new upcoming team in the SEC West based off recruiting? Well, that's an important phrase there at the end. Based off recruiting, it's almost impossible to me that A&M's not eventually very good. It'd be hard for anybody to mess that up. I think if Jimbo Fisher's a pretty good coach, but with that level of talent, it'd be almost hard for anybody not to lead that to some level of success. But much the same way I kind of questioned a moment ago of, does Brian Kelly's own ego slow down what might otherwise happen naturally? LSU, once again, returning to a huge level of success. Part of me wonders if the heightened level of expectations amongst Texas A&M fans and boosters, especially those who are alleged to have thrown all this NIL money around, if that doesn't create a level of angst that once again has the potential to thwart what would probably just happen naturally if you allowed it to. Georgia was number one recruiting class in 2018, put other great classes together around that, won the national championship in 2021. Thus far, every program that has had a number one recruiting class during the playoff era has eventually won a national championship. A&M's on the clock to do that. They don't have quarterback. We talked yesterday about the way in which programs maybe find better quarterback play as they mature. A&M's going to try to do that here right now, but I wonder if the A&M fan and booster is going to be able to remain patient long enough to allow all this to play out. Because if they do, I think they'll eventually enjoy a lot of success. But if they can't be a little bit patient, they may actually stop the success from ever occurring. That's what I believe. Randy Hall says it's not A&M, it's ATM, which is very funny. Steve Shavini says A&M will be good, but still behind Alabama and us. Could very well be the case. I guess I would be curious to know, over the course of the next 3 years, is A&M the most obvious threat to Alabama in the SEC West? Seems to be that way right now. Does it remain that way? I'd be curious to see that. Over here on DawgNation.com for a minute. Jim Gunter says Brian, quote, Stinky Kelly does have a ring to it. You wonder if that nickname sticks for him. That's pretty funny. Patrick Ritchie's en route to Athens right now. Patrick, be careful as you drive, and I'm glad you're coming to the Classic City. Georgia and Olive says the ring should have been an animatronic bulldog with a gator in its mouth. I like that. That's a good idea. So Georgia and Olive says they are giving out the rings tomorrow. So that's cool to hear. I'm excited about being able to see that. That's great. As I said, I may have been the only person that didn't know that. Greg Baker on folks maybe not quite expecting Georgia to win the national championship a year ago, or what people were thinking about Georgia at the time. It really is true. I mean, in the aftermath of all of this, we have a tendency to kind of go back retroactively and kind of view things as maybe more true than we ever viewed them to be before that. Like, Georgia's this historic, team, this historic defense. But, I mean, that wasn't really reflected in the preseason conversation a year ago. There weren't very many of those guys who were preseason first-team All-SEC, preseason first-team All-America. There weren't a ton of those guys who were necessarily projected as first-round picks, a year prior. A lot of that happened during the season. And if it could have happened last year for Georgia, it could also happen again this year there as well. So Patrick Ritchie coming up from Statesboro. So, Patrick, glad to have you coming in here. Good to see you. Ohio Dog says, honest expectations for G-Day. I expect it to be a pretty vanilla day for the defense. I don't know that I ever get much of a good read on what's happening defensively. I guess when you see defensive backs running step for step with guys, that's a pretty easy thing to translate. Or when you see a guy go out and make a million tackles, that can be a pretty easy thing to translate. But the pass rush is almost just non-existent. The actual scheming itself, I mean, so much of what Georgia does defensively is about like confusing guys pre-snap, and you're not really doing that on a G-Day situation. I'm guessing you get Big ovation at some point in time for Eric Gilbert. He'll probably make some sort of play. Big one from Dom there as well. Big play, I'd say, coming from A.D. Mitchell at some point in time. I don't know how good the overall quarterback numbers are going to end up being, but my guess is between Beck or Vandergrift, one or both of those will make a big play, like a big throw at some point in time that gives you a little bit of a wow factor on that. I'm guessing that they probably have a little bit of a highlight moment or two that makes you maybe think, ooh, what could that look like if in an extended situation? I think it'd be really fun tomorrow to see a running back make somebody miss. Give me a little bit of a move in the open field to turn a 6-yard gain into a 15-yard gain. And that'd be kind of a cool thing to see, to show a little bit of wiggle tomorrow. Wouldn't mind seeing that. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Dr. Mo Morris says the new enemy is the lousy, stinking Crimson Tide. He says Florida's a joke. So there you go on that. Jeff Doak says, tried my first finished long drink last night. Thanks for the heads up. It was good stuff. I'm happy to hear you say that. Always makes me happy when you guys enjoy that kind of thing. And I am always grateful for those of you who support us. And our friends at the Finished Long Drink have been good supporters of ours for quite some time. They really have been. So that's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. So happy to hear that. Let me go to YouTube here for a moment, and we've got to get ready to get off the air after that. If you're going to be in Athens, I hope to see you. I really do. Really hoping to see you there tomorrow at one of the places we're going to be. And now there's this. Ace Dog says, great show from Truist Park. Thank you so much for that. He says, the Braves starting to worry me. Not a great beginning for a title defense. Yeah, they've been a little bit lackluster. I think that Brian Snicker even admitted they were looking forward to being on the road, kind of getting away from some of the World Series celebration type stuff, although last night the road didn't treat them very well either. So a couple more here in San Diego, L.A. after that. We'll see if they stabilize here just a bit, but it has been a little bit of a rough start. I won't deny that. Jonathan Aaron says, if Florida put up numbers like that against their first team defense, does that say they are that bad, or AR-15 is that much better than last year? Yeah, that's always the thing you're left to wonder. Like some of what I read from some of the Florida people was a little critical of the first team defense. Didn't really feel like that they had a good day, but admittedly, you are kind of left to wonder about that a bit. I almost take more out of what Napier said about the game than I do about the game itself. It just seemed pretty obvious to me that Napier really wanted to push Anthony Richardson. I don't think Florida is one of those teams right now that you would put in the category of certainly not quarterback controversy and not even quarterback competition. I think at this point in time, you should consider the Florida quarterback competition to be over. Last year, I don't know that Jones or Richardson ever really separated one from the other. I think that pretty clearly now Richardson has separated from Miller. Is it Jack Miller? Yeah, from Jack Miller. And maybe that's a good thing for Florida. Maybe it'll turn out to not be quite such a good thing. But it's pretty obvious right now the Gators have the guy they want to start at quarterback. Let's see what else. Where did Emory Jones end up going? Did Emory Jones ever find a home? Let me look at this up. That's a really good question, Paul. I don't remember that either. Where did Emory Jones land up? I guess he still hasn't found a place yet. So I guess he has not found that place to transfer as of yet, unless I'm just missing that, but I don't believe that he has. Lesko says it's worth noting that most players in the Bama roster know what it's like to lose a national title. There isn't one active Georgia player that can relate. That's pretty good, Lesko. I like that. Let's see what else. Nick Saban was on some show. What show was this? This week, and he was asked about losing the national. Oh, he was on like the NFL Network podcast. What's his name? And he was asked about losing the national title game. And I got to tell you, this may come across as petty, but it was pretty satisfying for me to sit there and listen to Saban talk about his disappointment about losing the national title game. Nothing that he said was all that newsworthy or noteworthy, but it was still kind of nice to hear him disappointed. I have to say I enjoyed that. I did indeed. Scott Pete says Jack Miller was terrible last night. Yeah, I kind of heard that he didn't have much of a spring, to be honest with you. I did hear that. Let's see what else. Somebody says our Gator hater updater is wrong. I don't think it is, though, right? I don't think that's the case. I mean, listen, it's always possible, but I don't think that's the case. I think we're right on that. One of y'all check me if you want to, but I believe we're right. Years ago, we had our Gator hater countdown was wrong almost for the entire year, but eventually we got it fixed. Somebody was nice enough to point it out to us. Jordan Harris asking about Tyke Smith. Yeah, I have to say, as of yet, I don't quite know how Tyke fits into all of this as of yet. I don't. Just to be completely honest, I'd heard different things about him last year, and so I guess that's still a wait and see type thing for me. Frank Patterson said, did you see where Billy Napier announced the Florida team's going to wear black jerseys for special games? I did see that. And look, I guess they're doing this for a good cause. I guess they're going to they're going to auction off the uniforms and then give the money to like military families. I may have only like 50% of this right. But I believe what I saw was they're going to wear these special uniforms from time to time and then auction it off and like give it to military families in need, which I'm obviously very much in favor of. Who wouldn't be? So from that standpoint, even I can say that's a nice thing that Florida's doing. But it does drive me crazy that these teams now, and I guess this is a little bit easier, from a Georgia standpoint because black is one of Georgia's colors. But like, is there any team in sports that hasn't worn like some version of black? Even teams that don't have that as part of their color scheme, like to me, that just drives me crazy. And I would say that I know that I'm a well-known Florida hater. I'd say that some of the stuff that Florida does from a uniform standpoint is the absolute worst in college sports. It's just awful. They take what is already a pretty ugly color scheme in my mind and find a way to make it worse. And like doing this with like black is even, we're going to wear black as a part of like our big games. It's not what your team colors. It's just not. And I don't know. Maybe that stuff doesn't matter anymore. But like when Ohio State wears black, drives me crazy. When the Lakers wear black, I think they've done that before. It drives me crazy. It's like some of these teams that just wear like the black when it's not part of your colors. That drives me insane. But maybe I'm the only one. Foster Moss says, I'm going to be looking for you at G-Day. Foster, I hope to see you there as well. Antonio Jones also mentioning Tennessee in a different comment, but that's another team that's like just sort of randomly worn black before. I think it looks awful. Looks awful. Scott Pete says, he says it's 5,213 days since January 6, 2008. But Florida won the national title on January of 2009. The 2008 season ended on January of 2009. That's when they won the national title. That's where we're getting the number from, right? Like I said, y'all check me on that, but I mean, Florida won the national title in the 2008 season in a title game that was played in January of 2009. That's where we're getting that from. Let's see what else. We got to get ready to go after this. Good to see Jack Marino in the comment section. Jay Shipes also letting it be known that he's going to be there tomorrow. I'm hoping to see Jay. Jay wants to go hang out after it's all said and done. I don't know if I can pull that off, Jay. The next day is Easter. Let's not forget that. I do have some Easter things I have to do, so I'm not quite sure. Scott Pete says either way, he just likes the idea of 52-11 more so. Maybe that's the case. Jonathan Aaron says that Florida has to wear the black jerseys because no one would bid on those ugly orange jerseys. That's probably true. Chase White says, wish he could do Georgia would do the all red. We have seen some recruits wearing the red jerseys, the red pants. Georgia barely wears the black. Here's what's kind of funny. What if Florida starts wearing black jerseys more frequently than Georgia does? That's actually kind of funny. That Georgia's got the black jerseys. They are an official team color for UGA. Georgia almost never wears them. Florida going to start wearing black all the time when it's not even a team color. That's pretty funny. Pretty funny. Let's see what else. Paul Moon said, I'd also like to see all black with red helmets. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like I have had to like make peace with a lot of this uniform stuff because I am a pretty big traditionalist. I just kind of like traditional uniforms. But over the course of time, there are a lot of Georgia fans that would like to see a lot more alternate combinations, and I've had to make peace with that a little bit. Let's see what else. Baggins and Friend says, please no red pants. See, I grew up in an era when Georgia did wear a lot of red pants. I thought the red pants they wore at, like, say, Arkansas in 2020 were pretty cool. I thought the white stripe on the side was too wide, but I thought the pants in general were pretty cool. I like the white jersey's red pant look. I do like that. Let's see what else. Our buddy Brock, who's been in here trolling today, says, I rock my Bama hat and my Tua jersey every week. If I were you, I'd wear that Tua jersey right now while you can, because he's about to no longer be an NFL starting quarterback, and I don't know if there's going to be much to say about that Tua jersey at that point in time. So just wear that jersey while you can. I just want to make sure you get your money's worth out of that. Chase White says, I like the black pants too. But am I missing that? I don't know that I've seen a recruit wearing black pants. Has that happened? Or are there videos of recruits wearing black pants? I don't know that I've seen that. Maybe so. Steve Delph says the silver britches are long gone. These are dull gray. That is so true. I saw a photo the other day somebody shared on Twitter of like Georgia from the 90s. Those silver britches looked so good. This is like kind of thing, like if you're not like I'm a fan that likes uniforms and things like that. I just do. Some people are too self-serious to like uniforms, but I do enjoy uniform talk. And there's like a video, like a photo the other day. It was like, 3 Georgia players had their silver britches on. These are like true, like shiny silver britches. They looked so good. And it just reminds you of just like how dull and bland these current pants are. And I guess the word on the street is, well, Nike can't make the shiny silver. But Nike also makes the NFL uniforms and the Cowboys wear shiny silver. Like, I honestly don't understand the conspiracy against the shiny silver britches. I don't get this at all. But what Georgia wears now is so far away inferior to what it used to wear in this particular category. And nobody seems to be willing to do anything about it. I don't understand that. Corey Allen says the red pants on the road is classy. I agree. He says, plus it saves the silver britches for the home fans. I actually don't mind that at all. I don't mind that at all. Paul Moon says, I don't think I ever saw the silver britches in person. Yeah, I don't quite remember when they stopped wearing them. It's just one of those things like one day, many years ago, we all looked around like, hold on, these britches aren't silver anymore. It'd be like if Notre Dame slowly started wearing like, I guess like a faded yellow helmet. Like, hey, it's the gold dome. Well, that ain't gold. Somewhere along the way, the silver britches just got turned into like gray. All right, we got to get ready to go. Alan Berry says top 5 uniforms in college football. I do think Georgia's uniforms look really good. The uniform right now in college football that I love more than anybody's, this may surprise you a little bit, the old school uniforms that Pitt is wearing right now, I think those are phenomenal. Like the mustard yellow helmets with like the blue, jerseys. Like those uniforms look so good to me. So good. That's probably my favorite in the sport right now. Scott Pete likes the Michigan uniforms. Yeah, I like the old school classic look there for Michigan. I do. It was cool seeing those in person, getting dragged up and down the field in the Orange Bowl. I actually really did enjoy that. Like, I'm one of those guys that I like seeing Georgia playing classic opponents. I do, and Michigan clearly was one. I do enjoy that. All right, final comments, and then we're gone. Miriam Corbin says, let's tweet Josh Brooks and ask about the Silver Bridges. I would like to it's like, we've interviewed Greg McGarity before when he was athletic director. We'll interview maybe Brooks at some point in time. It's like, some shows will put him on like the Inquisition about whatever issue related to fundraising or something like that. Like the thing we want to put him on the witness stand about is what's happened to these Silver Bridges and why have they gone away? That's about what we do right there. Matt Rukavina says off topic, but you got to make it to San Diego. I spent a lot of my childhood there. Yeah, no surprise. Matt's a big traveler. He says, great American city. Go see Del Mar and Rancho Santa Fe. Here's the other thing too. It's like from a golf standpoint, it's actually not that difficult to play like Torrey Pines, right? I mean, California residents can even play it pretty cheap. If you're non-Californian, I guess you don't get the benefit of that, but you get a lot of other benefits. But what's kind of weird is like La Jolla, like where Torrey Pines is, I mean, that's actually a fairly accessible course there too. Steve Rogers, we're going to probably go live around 11 a.m. or so. Now, we'll be at Creature Comforts well before that, but we'll probably hit up live around 11 a.m. or so. And have Keith Marshall and Champ Bailey and Aaron Murray. Matt Rugavina says classic uniforms: Bama, Penn State, Southern Cal, Notre Dame, Michigan. Yeah, I have to admit, like the one of those that I do like more than I wish I did is Notre Dame. I just think that Notre Dame's got kind of a cool look. I do have to admit that, and I wish I didn't feel that way, but I do. Keith Folds sharing an Easter blessing in the comment section. You'd love to see that. Let's see what else. We got to get ready to go. Steve Shaffini, nice comments from him in there too. Keith Folds says, I want to see red helmets, black jerseys, and red breeches. That'd actually be kind of a cool look. At this point in time, I'm just sort of fine with whatever when it comes to that. Stephanie Godwin says, I hope they broadcast the ring ceremony. So, Stephanie, even if they don't put it on TV, I'm sure there'll be plenty of Georgia social stuff on that. We may even have our own social stuff on that there as well. So if you don't get enough of it on TV, you should get a lot of it on social media. For sure. Philip Jordan Wells giving you the San Diego Superchargers back in the day of Air Coryell. That's a good old uniform. People who are older than me love those old school powder blue Chargers uniforms. That's a very popular look for sure. All right, DawgNation.com, then we're gone. Randy Hall says, get the Shipes hype. Talking about Jay Shipes. There you go. Double Dog 90 says, hearing anything about UGA players pursuing anybody in the portal, my guess is we see a nice new crop of portal names probably start emerging here post G-Day, not because it's G-Day, but just because we're kind of done with spring practice across the board. And I'd say like early summer, Georgia probably adds a guy, maybe two. Now, how do you make that work with the scholarships? I honestly don't know. I really don't. But Georgia knows. So I would say that between now and the time you go on summer vacation, Georgia's probably added at least one player in the transfer portal, and they may add more than one. That's my guess there on that. Okay, we got to go for now. Thanks for being here. Of course, make sure you check out the Atlanta Journal-Constitution online at ajc.com for your all the stuff related to all the cool stuff going on there with the AJC. Always really good stuff. Also, tonight the Hawks have their play-in game, right? This is against Cleveland, I believe. So Hawks start their postseason run. They're actually playing a little bit better. At least they played better than tonight. So we'll see if they can find some of the magic in the postseason this year that they had a year ago. Also, Braves, as we told you, out west. Not a good night in San Diego last night, but maybe gets better over the course of the weekend. And plenty of good coverage of the NFL draft there, too. Where around town you can have some Easter egg hunts and also some interesting stuff involving Shakespeare there as well. So that's all good and on the way. Georgia and Olive gives you a Go Hawks. Yeah, we'll root them on in a big way. So kind of excited about that. That'll be fun. But I'll see you tomorrow in Athens at the Creature Comforts Tap Room tomorrow morning, starting at 10:30. Live on video, probably around 11. DawgNation post-game show from the UGA bookstore when it's all said and done, in and around Sanford Stadium all day. Other than that, we will see you there and talk to you tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. Have a great weekend. Happy Easter to you all. Back here again on Monday. Talk to you then, everybody.